Well, g'day everyone. Today I thought I'd take you through sort of a review of the Tamron 70 to 300mm. I've used it over a couple of weeks now, so I can sort of discuss how I've found it in a couple of shoots that I've done. And I thought I'd take you through the specifications and show you some real images from this lens, so you can sort of see for yourself whether you think that the quality is good enough for what you'd like, whether the zoom range is good enough for what you'd like as well. And I've used a couple of different cameras. I've used the A7 III and also the A6 400, so we'll be showing some APS-C type crops with this as well, because sometimes the reach from the APS-C crops when you put this on is amazing, and so I thought I'd show you how that worked as well. So let's start by first having a look at the specifications that this lens has, and then we'll go through it from there, where I can show you some images. So the lens itself is the Tamron 70 to 300mm. Now it is a variable aperture lens, so it is a 4.5 to 6.3. And the model number is just called the DI3 RXD model. And just to sort of take you through a couple of things about this that you may find interesting, is that it is a really lightweight lens. It actually only weighs 545 grams or 19.2 ounces. So it is very, very light to hold. And that's one great thing if you're using this for, say, travel photography or something like that. It fits really nicely on the camera and, sort of really doesn't weigh it down at all. It also has it's 148mm or 5.8 inches long with a maximum diameter of 77mm wide as well. It does take the 67mm filter threads, so if you have the same lenses like on the 28 to 75 or the 17 to 28, you can use the same filter the whole way around. Now, being a native Sony lens, it's not Sony, but Tamron are native. You can even upgrade the firmware on these lenses. The IAF and everything is supported, and it works very, very well. I didn't really use this for portraiture because I wanted to try this as a travel type lens, and I'll show you the images, what I took. It was a little bit different than what I usually take, but I did test the IAF and it worked very, very well. In fact, the autofocus was very good right the way through the whole lens, unless you had really low contrast scenes, and I'll talk to you about that like when I was shooting a bird, a kookaburra, and I'll discuss that, my findings there as well. So if you're using it on an APS-C type camera, you basically get a 450mm. That's what you get if you're using it on those sort of cameras, which was really good. It says for APS-C mirrorless format, you get a 105 by 450mm equivalent view, and I'll show some of those examples so you can have a look and just see how that worked. Just to show you here too that the lens is made up of 15 elements in 10 groups, and there's also an arrangement of low dispersion lens elements as well. So I took it along a whole couple of road trips where I could try it and just see how it worked in real life, and I think that's sometimes a lot better, a way of sort of showing how the lens will work. And I did take some sharpness tests, and I've used brick walls. I know I hate shooting brick walls, but I did do it as a test to sort of see how the sharpness went, and I also showed it between a lot of shots with, say, going from 70mm up to 300, just to sort of show you the range that you can get to with the lens as well. So let's start going through the lens and we can have a look at the type of results that we were getting. So I thought we'd start first at looking at the build quality. So the build quality in these Tamron lenses is always excellent. Now, they do have a plastic body, but the plastic is a really good material. And in fact, I've found that with my Tamron lenses that I've got, they last or scratch much less than what the Sony lenses are or do. And I've found that with constant use, and like the 28 to 75, for instance, stays almost permanently on one of my cameras, it still almost looks as good as the day that I've bought it. And that's one great feature about how these lenses work. The build quality does seem to be very, very good, and the scratch resistant particularly is very good, and they are weather sealed as well, which is nice as well. The only thing you sort of don't have is the stabilization in the lens, which you'd have in, say, the Sony options that you get or some of the Sigma options, but I've found that's not an issue for me. I just up the shutter speed and compensate for it that way, and with the low light ISO or with the ISO capabilities of the latest cameras, that doesn't seem to be a real problem. So I thought we'd look at sharpness to start with. So let me switch over to here. So I took this image on the way going down to the waterfalls, actually, I saw this old car that I thought would be a great image to shoot. And this was shot at 131 millimeter at f5. It tends to have its sharpness probably 5.6, and I'll show you that with some of the results later on. But these are just JPEGs, basically straight out of camera. But if you look at the results here of how sharp this lens actually is, I'm not sure how this will come up with the recording, but it is super sharp, or when I say super sharp, it is very sharp and really quite acceptable for the price that you're paying for this lens. You can see all the detail has been kept in the car here, and I think it looks really, really good for what it is actually. So I'm really happy with how that looks. So I think overall, if you're looking at it, is it sharp? Yes, and this was at 131 millimeter, so basically halfway through its focal range. If you look at, say, images like this, you can see that this was shot at 167 millimeter, and you can see if I enlarge here that the eye is really very, very sharp, and you can see all the detail in the feathers and everything here as well. So it's lovely and sharp. There is a cobweb in the background, but that's slightly out of focus due to I've focused on the bird itself. But you know, I think the sharpness in itself is really nice on this lens. And like I said, these haven't had sharpening put on at all. You're basically just seeing them as they are out of the camera. So let's look at sharpening overall to see how it goes through the whole focal range. So I stuck the camera on a tripod and focused basically just around this area here on this little shutter. Now this is at f4.5, and then I raised the aperture up as we went along. So if we look at this, I'll take you through the different focal ranges. So 4.5 looks really nice. F5.6, I think it's sharpened up just a touch, and I'll look overall in a minute just to check the corners as well. We're looking here at 7.1. We're now up to F9. I think it is starting to ease off in sharpness as we go up. I can definitely see when we get to F11 that the sharpness is nowhere near as good as F5.6. And if we go up to F16, F20, and F22. I think there is a little bit of diffraction too as we start to go up. I can definitely see a little bit of diffraction on the lens there as well. But let's have a look, say, at the primary, which I think is about the 5.6. And I'm just going to sort of have a look overall. And I think it probably is nice and sharp right out to the edges. It is definitely sharper in the middle. It's not quite as sharp on the outer edges. You can see that with the little bugs that are here as well. They're not quite as sharp as what it is right in the center here, which is really nice and sharp. So there is a little bit of fall off on the edges, but I would probably expect that in a lens of this price range. I think for what it is, it looks really good. So that's 5.6. At 70 millimeter, I think is the peak there. Let's look at, say, 300 millimeter, just to see how this looks. And again, if you're looking at 6.3, I think it's nice and sharp overall. It definitely isn't as sharp at the 300 millimeter end, though, I don't think, as the 70 millimeter end, but it is acceptably sharp. Like I said, I've had no sharpening put in post on this. I just want to sort of see the edges. I think the edges definitely do go out a little bit compared to, say, what the center is. The center is really quite good. I mean, if you look at that sort of bit of leaf or grass growing out there, it really is quite sharp there. Like I said, it's not as sharp as the 70 mil though. As we go up through the focal range here, so this is 6.3, this is 7.1, F8, F9. And I'm just going to go up to here where we start to go up to the higher F stops. This is F22. This is F12. f29. Now it does go to f33, but you can see that the quality definitely suffers. There's a lot of diffraction as you go up in that area. It gets, you know, quite bad if you go to f32. You can see that it's lost its sharpness, and it looks really poor compared to where, you know, we were sort of down at f5 or f8. So there is a problem if you want to, say, use those really small f-stops like f32. Now, I also did a test halfway through the focal range, which is 134 mil, and it's quite good as well, particularly if you're dealing with, you know, say around about 5.6 or 6.3, I should say. It's quite good here. You can see that it's nice and sharp through this area as well. So if you're using the lower f-stops particularly, it does seem like the lens is really quite nice and sharp. And again, you can see that if you're looking at the bit of grass that you're dealing with through here as well. Again, it does soften off as you go out to the outside edges. You can sort of see that with the nail if we're dealing through here. And if we go out to the edges outside here too, it's softer as well. So it's definitely a lot sharper in the center of the lens. If we move up with apertures, I'll just sort of quickly go through this again. You can see this is f14, and you can see that it's definitely not as sharp as you move up through the aperture range. And if I went to f22, you can see that it's even less sharp. You can see here that it's certainly sharper if you're dealing with the lower aperture range. You know, your 5.6, 6.3 tends to be the sweet spot of where this lens will be at its best. I mean, it's still workable if you go up, but I definitely wouldn't be going up to, say, f22 or f32 because the diffraction comes in then, and the images are really not as good. So I would certainly be sort of keeping your aperture as low as possible. But overall, the lens is nice and sharp in the center, but it's not as sharp if you go onto the edges of the image. But like I said, you'd expect that with a lens around this price range. Chromatic aberrations itself is very, very well controlled, actually. I was looking through here, and I shot this one at 300 millimeter. And this was at f22. I wanted to try one first at f22 just to see how it was at f22, and it shows that my sensor could have had a clean, actually, but you can see the bugs and stuff like that because I'm using f22, but there's no real halos and things popping around at f22, so that was a good test. I did a couple of others as well, which this one's at 6.3, and we can have a look at this and just to see how this is. So if I enlarge it up, again, chromatic aberration is very, very well controlled. I can't really see much with, you know, your red and blue edges and things like that. So I think it's controlled very, very well, and I'm really happy with that. So that was at f6.3 at 70 mil. This one here was 132, so I wanted to go roughly halfway just to see how it is. And again, this was at 7.1, and I'm just having a look around here just to see what's going on as well. And I think you can see that the chromatic aberrations are really, really well controlled. So that's one really good aspect of the lens there. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the images that we captured through the day. Kerry actually grabbed me here. I was using another lens that I'm going to review, capturing some of the foliage and stuff there. But you can see it's lovely and sharp. It was great focusing in this type of scenario as well, even though it was heavily backlit. It focused really quite well. I then wanted to go and do some shots with slow shutter using the lens that way on a tripod, and this was at 1/3 of a second. And it was 74 mil, just capturing the beautiful waterfall. This was another one I wanted to turn at landscape just to see how it went, and it was at 130 millimeter, still at 1/3 of a second. You can see the nice flow in the water there as well. Just for sort of sharpness too and color, you can see this was shot at 300 mil, and again, it's really quite beautiful when you're looking at it. You know, it's really quite sharp if you're looking at it through there too. So it really is sharp in the centers, and that looks really nice. I love the color rendering. Everything about this looks great. Some of the fishing or cray baskets that were out there were really nice to shoot too, and you can sort of see the sharpness when you're looking through this too, to see how sharp that this all is as well at 300 millimeter. So it's certainly very, very sharp and lovely and colorful that you always expect to get from the Tamron lens. lenses. These are all really nice images too. I wanted to grab this one of the bird, just that was through here as well. This was at 204 millimeters. Again, just to look at detail that you're sort of getting in the bird here. It's lovely and sharp again. There certainly is no problem at all in the centers getting something that's really nice and sharp. Even at 300 millimeters, you can see here that in the center, this was shot at 6.3. You can see the individual grains of the sand there as well. So the rendering is terrific in that regard. And I showed birds earlier that, these are super sharp too, from the eyes of the birds there that you can sort of see, which are really nice as well. And the detail in the feathers and everything else is terrific. Close focus, you can sort of see here, this was shot at 73 mil, but it gives you an idea about how close you can get to things like plants and stuff. And I think it's really nice. The rendering's lovely, color's lovely, beautiful and sharp again in the center here. Looks terrific. So I certainly have got nothing to complain about colors and sharpness with this lens. So I did take some images with the A6400, so I'll take you through those and just show you what we did. Again, you're getting up to 450 mil when you stick this on something like an A6400, so it's great, and we've got, we were a long way away and we grabbed shots of the surfers coming in. The focus tracking was brilliant, like it worked really well going through all of these images, which was fantastic. You can see with the surfers even looking at me, back towards me here. And then with the birds, we did some birds. This was actually outside, and the bird was sitting on the edge of this little, I think it's a railing here. And again, really nice and sharp. The images are lovely. And these birds were in my back garden, just some local birds. This is the male, really pretty. Again, it's another one. I just stuck on tracking and it just followed the birds around and I just kept shooting. These are the male. This is the female as well. It's nowhere near as colourful, but still beautiful. And this is the little baby that they just had, which is really cute. And again, another one of the mother there, and another one here of the father as well, which is really nice. So it works really well on the A6400, and this was, like I said, it's equivalent to 450 mil. Okay, so let's look at the zoom range that you can get with this type of lens. So I'll switch over to here and I'll give you a look. So this was a couple of shots that I did. The one on the left-hand sides are always 70 mil, and then I've gone up to 300 mil on the right-hand side. So you can sort of see the difference. I've concentrated on these two bits of the ferns through here, and you can see the type of image enlargement that you can get by shooting the 300 mil. This was another one that I took as well. Through here, I just focused on this lovely little branch that's coming out here with the dripping water coming off the bottom of the moss that's there, and you can see the one on the right-hand side as well when I'm shot up at 300 mil. We then went out to drive on the road. This was on the way down to Apollo Bay, and this I wanted to see sort of how much you could zoom in here as well. And if you look at the house, which is here where the little hand is showing, right there, and then if you zoom into 300 mil, you can see the house quite clearly through here, and the background houses coming around here through the bay. It was a very, very overcast day though, as well. But like I said, these are just the images basically as they are. I haven't really done any editing at all, apart from just copy them and paste them together. That's why it's a PNG up the top. Another one down here as well was the boat that we were just walking around, and we saw the boat over in this area here, and the one on the left hand side is 70 mil, and the one on the right side here is 300. You can see that the images are really lovely and sharp. There's certainly nothing wrong with the images at all, and I'm very happy. Like for a travel photographer, these would be great. A couple of the crates here for the crays. You can see here this is 70 mil on the left hand side, and then I've blown over here and enlarged this up to 300 mil, and it's very, very sharp as well. And I'm very happy with how these all look. Again, we were walking across and I could see a little bird sitting on the boat here, a seagull, and then we showed that at this side, the type of enlargement that you get. On the beach itself, we looked at these leaves that are coming through here. So the one on the left-hand side is 70 mil, and this sort of shows how much you can get into 300, and you can see what that's done to the background, how it's blurred it out. And again, just traveling down the road, you can see that the car here on the right-hand side, that was sitting on this area over here. So you can sort of see the enlargement that you're getting out of these. It's quite substantial. And again, if we look over here, this is a gum tree, and I'm looking at the flowers, and then on 300 mil, you can sort of see the effect that we're getting through here as well. So the enlargement itself is terrific. So let's look at vignetting now. And I went through the whole range here of using 70 mil, and I also did one at 300 just to see how it looked. I wanted to see how controlled vignetting was, and you can see overall it's pretty good. There is a little bit of vignetting down at f4.5. You can sort of see that on the edges if you're looking through here, and it sort of disappears when you get to around about 5.6 or 6.3, and then you don't really notice it much at all completely the whole way through then, and that's quite interesting if you're looking at that. This was using at 300 millimeter. Again, there's vignetting down on the lower extremes of the f-stops. You can see it's 6.3. You know, you can see it's quite pronounced there. Sort of disappears as we go up. It certainly has disappeared when you get up to f13 and 14. But remember, the issue too here is that as you went up to say f32 and stuff, there's diffraction, so you're losing that sharpness in your lens as well. So there's definitely a little bit more vignetting in the 300 mil mark as against the 70 mil mark. But again, that could be totally controlled if you were, say, using the tools that are available in Lightroom to get rid of that. So I think overall, I really enjoyed using it, in fact, and it was a great lens to say stick on something like the A6-300 or the A6-400 as well to get that extra reach. And the focus was really great on the A6-400. I found overall the quality was great, and I really enjoyed using it. The sharpness in the center particularly is really quite good. It does soften as you're going on the outsides, but I would expect that on a lens sort of like this at this cost range. I think it's around $550 United States money. So I think it's really good for what it is, and it would be a great lens to say take on a travel with you where you wanted to have that reach as well as say shoot 70 mil as well. And I'm really quite happy with how it looks. I think the rendering is very good. Like I said, sharpness is very good. Chromatic aberrations were well controlled as well, which is great. So overall, I haven't really got much bad to say about it for the costs that this lens actually is. If you have any questions, please leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And apart from that, guys, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now.